In a recent Viewpoint, my colleague Catherine talked about young people in their late 20s and 30s, still claiming on dating apps to be figuring out their life goals. I thought it was an interesting observation. It struck me as completely true. And it begged a much larger question. Why is it that so many young adults still haven't figured out what their goals are by the time they leave their 20s and enter their 30s? Why do Gen Z keep acting like children long after they stop being children? Why are they completely infantilized? What have we done to create a generation of overgrown babies who walk through shopping malls dressed in elasticated leisure wear like a baby, gawping at brightly lit shop windows like a baby, and sucking on huge soft drinks like a baby with a bottle? Anyone in their 30s who says that they are still figuring out their life goals should be thrashed mercilessly. In fact, anyone who uses the term life goals in the first place should also be thrashed, just on principle. I'm Peter Kearney, and this is Viewpoint. Okay, maybe the thrashing is a bit harsh, but seriously, why do young adults today behave like children? Why do they seem to run away from responsibility, resilience, and maturity? I recently interviewed the entrepreneur Declan Ganley, and I asked him about falling birth rates in the Western world. What was behind this phenomenon? Why don't young people want to get married, have a family, and settle down? His answer was revealing and insightful.
I will put it this way, because we could talk about this for hours, and we're not going to do that. So I'm going to put it this way. It is chronic risk aversion. It is an unwillingness to take any form of risk, to risk any inconvenience, any discomfort. And that extends throughout life decisions, having a child, making a commitment to marriage, making a commitment to, if you're a man, to support the mother of your child for the rest of her life and for the rest of that child's life, to be there for them. Those are risks that you must take, that I think you are morally and duty bound to take, that we must, as human beings, we have to take those risks and make those decisions. But it seems that a significant number of people have been convinced that you can live a life without risk. And by the way, economically, that's a disaster, because we must have risk takers. We must have people who are willing to take that risk to go out and try and fail to create that new business. And then, having learned from that, try again. And without risk takers, there are no heroes.
I hadn't thought about it like that before, but I think Declan's right. What we're witnessing is chronic risk aversion. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised. For the last 25 years, an entire generation have been told that they are growing up in a world of extreme risk, where danger lurks round every corner. From climate alarmism, where they've been told since they were at school that the icebergs are all melting and the planet will probably burn to a crisp in a blazing apocalypse, to the warnings printed on the takeaway coffee cup they buy, telling them that their drink is hot. Our education system, our media, and our politicians seem to have gone out of their way for decades to scare the life out of them. This is about how often young people have been warned against supposed dangers. When a cleaner mops a floor, a big yellow sign is put up that says, "Be careful," or "Caution." When they played in the school playground, school assistants patrolled wearing high-vis jackets. If a child was hit with a ball at playtime, the ball was frequently removed and replaced with the dreaded foam ball, which was safer. A whole generation were told that if they ventured out on a bike without a helmet on, they were inviting instant death. Every product they bought in the supermarket showed allergy warnings on the packet. No one could order in a restaurant without being asked first if they had any allergies or intolerances. Is it any surprise that they, Gen Z, grew up with a paralysing fear of the future, a fear of life in general, and especially of bringing their own children into this obviously staggeringly dangerous and terrifying world? Yes, I am poking fun at them for being overgrown children, but I also want to pin much of the blame on my generation for letting this happen. Gen Z has been structurally infantilized in many respects through longer financial dependence, parental monitoring, and fewer unsupervised experiences, to the point where we have changed the actual definitions of adulthood by helicoptering, overprotecting, and cushioning them from reality. We've scared them witless about what is in fact a really wonderful reality. The world has never been safer or healthier. Life expectancy, infant mortality, average incomes, educational attainment, they're all significantly better than they've ever been. We should have a generation of young people who are more relaxed than ever, not constantly afraid of everything. We've held them back, and there's plenty of credible evidence that Gen Z has experienced a more prolonged and supervised transition into adulthood. Among some of the strongest supporting evidence is a large American study covering 8.3 million adolescents between 1976 and 2016 found substantial declines in dating, paid work, driving, going out without parents, and alcohol use. The authors describe this as a slower transition into adult activities or later independent experiences. There's also evidence showing delayed adult milestones. In the US, in 1993, 50% of 25 to 29-year-olds were married. In 2023, the figure was 29%. Among 30 to 34-year-olds, 60% had a child in their household in 1993. By 2023, that figure was 27% of 30 to 34-year-olds who had a child in their household. These figures demonstrate postponed family formation. Only 45% of US 18 to 34-year-olds surveyed in 2023 described themselves as completely financially independent. 44% had received parental help during the previous year. In the UK, 28% of people aged 20 to 34 lived with their parents in 2024, up from 25.6% in 2014. That is consistent with an extended transition to adulthood. In a 2023 US survey, 42% of parents answering about an adult child aged 18 to 24 said they tracked that child's location electronically. The figure fell to 21% for children aged 25 to 29 and 9% for those aged 30 to 34. This is fairly direct evidence that some young adults are still treated in ways once associated with children. It's also evidence that we have a serious problem with terminology and definitions when we refer to people in their 20s and early 30s as children. A systematic review of 74 studies found that overparenting was generally associated with poorer psychological behaviour, social and relationship development among 18 to 29-year-olds. How many organisations deliberately treat what used to be thought of as adults, people in their 30s, as youths? Why do some organisations, particularly churches, advertise youth events targeted at 18 to 35-year-olds? Shouldn't the 35-year-olds be at home with their spouse and their children, not hanging around with teenagers? If we tell 30-somethings that they're still youths, maybe we shouldn't be surprised when they don't want to marry and have families. We keep telling them they're one of the kids and inviting them to youth events. 18 to 35 is a 17-year age gap. How would we feel if a 22-year-old was invited to a 5-year-old's birthday party? It's the same age gap as when the 35-year-old hangs out with the 18-year-old. Well, we'd think it was very creepy and weird, because it is very weird. Perpetual adolescence used to be frowned upon. Now it seems to be encouraged. So can we really criticise a whole generation because they are still figuring out their life goals? Maybe we should criticise ourselves for moving the goalposts.